Hello and welcome to the Qreative Life podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Qureshi, but you can call me Q. Okay. And there's a little introduction that's going to play, and then I'm going to say, welcome to the Qreative Life podcast, Yasmin Ali. Hello, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. You're up in Chicago, is that right?
Yes, right outside of Chicago, I live in a tiny town called Oak Park.
Okay, all right. And you are an artist, a real artist.
A real artist, yes. Took me a long time to be able to say that about myself, but yes, I'm an artist.
Yeah. With I've seen your art, but I'm not a art nerd, so I don't really know that much. I would classify your art as uh abstract. Is that correct? Or modern abstract? Is that right? Okay.
Yes, and I actually am completely self-taught, so I don't know if I really classify my art in any one category, but yes, if there was one I would pick, it would absolutely be abstract. Um, maybe more modern contemporary, but yeah, absolutely abstract.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. Well, I'm going to start us with a quick icebreaker because I like to do that. And also because I'm nosy, I want to know what was the last book that you read?
Oh, wow. So I'm actually continuing to read a biography of the Prophet, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, called Muhammad. And it's just a book that I try to read at least once a year. And my goal is to usually read it during Ramadan, but I couldn't finish it, so I'm continuing to. It's a chapter by chapter account of just his life, and I feel like every time I read it, I learn something different.
That's good. I think who was it that said someone, maybe it's Kurt Vonnegut, said that if a book that's worth reading is worth reading more than once.
Hmm.
And I like the idea of revisiting works over time. I think that we have such like a consumerist mindset that we're like, oh well, I have to read as much as I can. I have to get as many books as I can. But there are specific books that I think are so valuable to us individually and collectively that we enjoy and we should enjoy reading them over and over again.
I agree. There's one book that I also read as many times as I have time to read. But that one is also special, and I think it's probably going to be next after this conversation. You just reminded me of it. But it's a biography of Pushkin, the Russian poet. It's actually one of my favorite books of all time by Lydia Lambert. It's not really in circulation that much, but it's beautifully written, just about his life and who he was, which he had an absolutely insane life, and one that was, I think, as poetic as the poetry that he wrote, but definitely worth checking out if you're interested in learning
Yeah.
more about that kind of life or poet.
Do you read poetry a lot?
I used to. Uh, to be honest, the last few years I have not been reading as much as I would like to or as I used to. But about before I had children, basically, yes, I used to read a lot more poetry. Yeah.
I can relate to that. I went through like a 20-year dry spell. I'm not even going to lie. I only rediscovered fiction like about 5 years ago.
Okay. Yeah. Fiction, and I have not read really any great fiction in a long time, and I do miss it a lot because I enjoyed the category so much when I used to read a lot. Uh, but yeah, one day when I have more time, I'll get back into it.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, and you have three children?
Two.
Two. Okay.
Mhm.
Excellent. Yeah, I have two as well. Mine are twins, however, so
Wow.
they both left at the same time.
How old are they?
23.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So lots of life lessons there. No, mine are 8 and the youngest just turned 3. So
Wow.
they're going through just so much life right now. Even that I remember, right, from my older daughter's perspective. And it's almost like sometimes you're reliving your own life. And in getting to actually, I don't know how to say this, but help them through those moments that you really struggled with too. Like, yeah, just challenges and also great moments that you're able to celebrate with them, but through a different perspective. It's been nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree. Although I have to say, this is my favorite time, having them at this age. They're just so interesting. They're so interesting right now.
What do they do?
Well, they do require a lot of time, but it's a lot more discussion and exploration and conversation. It's not like the chores and the cleaning and the cooking and the driving them around. It's more like, I need to talk to you for an hour on the phone because I am working through something. And
That's really nice.
it's nice. And then also just sort of watching how they're putting the pieces together, things that they've learned, things that they've discovered, how they're overcoming the crap that I may have given them. and becoming their own people. And it's a delight. Like, I think I was made to be the parent of adult children. I love it.
I don't know how I'm going to be when my kids are adults. I have no idea. I like to think that I'm going to, just let them take their reins and be independent, and really hoping I'm not going to be helicoptering both of them for the rest of their lives. But yeah, I think you have to change as a parent. Who I am right now as a parent is totally different than who I was 8 years ago. So I hope I keep changing for the better. But I think I've learned so much from them too.
Yep.
And I continue to kind of learn from where I'm going wrong, because you do realize where you're going wrong through them too.
Mm-hmm.
I really like it when my older daughter is able to kind of check me sometimes, and I appreciate that about her. And I tell her too, like, tell me where I'm going wrong, and I encourage her to speak up and like voice her opinions, her feelings, and um, in a way just stand up for herself. Even if it comes to me, really anyone in life, and learning from her, because she's such a different person. She's strong and independent, and I love that about her. Um, but she's so different than me. And I think that as a parent is also sometimes a shock to realize, like, this is not a mini me. I cannot expect her to do what I did at this age. She's going to do her own thing, and I have to respect that too. And I think that has been a total mindset shift in the last 2 to 3 years, as her personality has come out more. And my youngest is, oh my God, so strong-willed, mashallah, knock on wood. So we'll see how her personality develops too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good though. It's good that you're the kind of parent that is willing to let them grow into themselves. A lot of people, and I think maybe some of it is generational, because there was a whole time when they had no opinions. They were not allowed to have opinions. They weren't allowed to challenge authority. It was just, do what we tell you to do.
Yeah.
But they're so smart, and they have so much that they can teach us. And I think that, parents that are willing to let that dynamic emerge are very wise. Are very
I
wise.
think she's wise in many ways that I'm not. And it shocks me, the observations that I hear from her. She's able to pick up on things that I do miss sometimes in social situations. And even her level of observation at this age, I think, is so sharp. Um, yeah, I think kids are amazing. And I think they're way smarter than we give them credit for.
Yep, I agree. All right, well, let's talk. Speaking of children and childhood, I'd like to go back in time and meet little Yasmin and talk about what you were like as a kid and what your creativity looked like when you first started to realize that you had this power.
Um, as a kid, I was very quiet. I did not really talk much at all. I was nonverbal until, I don't know, probably four. And it's weird because I still remember people getting really nervous. Like my parents and my teachers would talk, she doesn't talk in class, and what can we do to help her? And I remember thinking to myself, but I'm fine. I don't really need to talk. What am I going to talk about? There really wasn't that need to, or I don't want to say need, the function, the ability of your brain to understand why communication is important. That part I want to say didn't develop until later. Um, but for a long time, it was just me understanding what things are saying to me and understanding communication that way first. Mm, my creativity first was pretty much using everything and anything around me. I would make designs on sidewalks using stones and branches. I would rip apart leaves, to try to understand what the inside was like and what I could make out of it too. Um, Branches in particular, I was always interested by, and now my main subject matter is actually trees. So it was just this evolving interest from when I was just a super little kid. But yeah, I was very quiet. I was always kind of stuck in my own world, in my own head, and always thinking about something else. It could be a little bit difficult sometimes. I'm told now, by my parents and my sisters too, that yeah, it would take sometimes a bit of a shaking or calling my name a couple of times to get my head back down to ground and get my attention back. Um, but I was very imaginative. I was always thinking of stories, different worlds, narratives, trying to understand something in a different way, and that's just how my brain worked, and that was my world really growing up. Um, I don't know if that part of me ever really left. I'm going to be honest. There's a huge part of that piece of me in childhood that is still very much there, and I credit that part of me for my continuing artistry too.
How did you engage with art? Did you read a lot? Did you paint and draw and things when you were a kid?
When I was a kid, no. I started off in different forms of art first. Painting did not actually come onto my radar until I was about 19 or 20. But when I was younger, it was reading and writing. I used to write poetry. I still have stacks and stacks of journals from when I was a kid, because I would write nonstop, just whatever happened in my day, stories, tons of poetry that eventually evolved into songwriting. And then I wrote my own songs, and I wrote and released an album with some really amazing people. God knows how long ago. But I was really proud of the fact that I wrote my own music and all of my own songs. And that came from all of those years of writing poetry that I was able to tap into. And it then just really watched all of these songs and the poetry just kind of spill out like it used to. But it is a proficiency. And if you don't do it for a long time, it does kind of take a little bit of work to get back to it, I found. Um, from there, I uh, started exploring different art forms. I performed a lot on stage, music, singing, different forms, traditional as well as interfaith music. And then I had my own band for a few years, and that was a lot of fun too. Um, I did some modern artwork. I was with an arts incubator in the city called Mozawa for three and a half years. And that was intense. It was a big collective of artists from every single medium. and we would get together about once a quarter to put together entire shows, with the goal of all of these mediums working together and breaking the boundaries down between the mediums to create something together. And that was an intense process because you had to work with people with completely different skill sets than you in a very short time frame to create something that people were coming to see. It was an actual performance. So I've dabbled in a lot of different art forms over the years, and painting is something that I tried when I was 19, and since the day I tried it, I never put it down.
Have you
Yeah,
lived in this same area your whole life?
pretty much. I was born in Chicago. Parents moved out to the suburbs, when they had kids, and then I moved back to the city after I got married. And I kind of stayed around the whole area since then, even
Yeah.
after, we're separated, etc. But I'm still in Oak Park, and I think that's my plan is to pretty much stay in this area. I don't know why
Yeah.
I've never really left it.
Yeah. No, I think that's good. And you're fortunate because Chicago is such a big city and it has such an established culture. And it has, you have a hub there. You have people that are there who are professional creators and they have established their communities. And so it's a good place to be nurtured, I think, if you're growing up artistically
I think so.
inclined. Yeah. Yeah.
It
So talk to me about what happened when you picked up paint for the first time. What was your, like, what was the environment and what kind of paint was it? And, like, what were your feelings? Tell me about what your feelings were when you started to do it.
yeah, it was I think everything happens for a reason. I was driving past this art store, and it was an independent art store. Later on, I found out it was closing down because there was a Blix opening up down the street, but they were going out of business. And I had been just thinking to myself in the back of my head, like, I really want to try painting or drawing or sketching, but I didn't know how to get into it. So I saw the store going out of business. I'm like, I'm just gonna go inside, see what they have, see if I can pick up a bunch of things to try. I walk inside, and this sweet, sweet man, he had owned the store for decades and he was retiring. Um, he just walked me through every single aisle, and I told him why I was there. I just want to try art. I've never done it before. And he's like, well, let me tell you everything. And he told me all about the different kinds of brushes, palette knives, different kinds of paint. He was a bit of a paint and brush snob. So he pointed out like the better quality. He's like, never go with like anything less than Grumbacher. And just he it was a wealth of knowledge, honestly, in like an hour that he gave me. And I was enamored, and I was like, yes, just tell me everything. I learned so much. He was so kind. He gave me just a ton of free stuff too that day. I still have some of the paint tubes from that trip. I don't think I'll ever really open them or use them. Um, but the first time that I painted, it just felt like it was what I was supposed to do. It felt natural, and it also felt like something I needed to keep doing. Um, it wasn't, like this big magical moment. It was more like, oh, it's like breathing. Basically, this is what I'm supposed to be doing with my time, and whatever I have, on this earth, this is what it's for. Um, So were there gaps in time that I stopped? Yes, but I always found that those gaps in time when I actually stopped actually painting, um, it never made me happy. I always found that it was always just that one medium that I had to keep going back to because it was, I think, at the end of the day, just a very important form of expression for me too. There were things that I couldn't really communicate in other ways that only came out through, the brush or the palette knife. And why that was, I really only understood much, much later in life. But now it makes a lot more sense why I never really did well when I stopped painting.
That's amazing.
I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. So many things there. First and foremost, just the fact that you had the incredibly good fortune to run into that man and he saw in you someone with genuine interest and was like, you're getting a download. And that's awesome, right? I love it. And I
It
find that
really,
that's true among people like who are true creatives. They are just thrilled to be able to share, right? They people who
mhm.
are really, a font of creativity do not view it as a limited resource and they're happy to share.
I agree. It was, for me, I kind of view that as like my art education, and how I got started was that gentleman, and I kicked myself for not remembering his name, but um, but it was one of the nicest and kindest things, really anyone has ever done, because of the amount of time and care and attention he gave. He truly believed in what he was passing on and in the value of it. And he also, I think, understood that I was going to value it. And it was just a really beautiful moment. And I think it's a moment I'm still grateful for, absolutely, till this day. It showed me, I think, the power of art, creativity, the generosity, that is present in it as well.
Yeah, yeah. One thing that I am hearing from the way that you've told this story is that it's very different from how a lot of creative people I talk to go about their discipline. And that is that you didn't seem to have, and I don't know if this is just with the painting or if this is just how you live your life, but you did not seem to have any kind of hang up about, you know, am I going to do, how do I do this? Do I do this the right way? I mean, you just did it. You're like, I want to try this. I'm going to do it. And I don't know if that's true or if that's just how your story came across, but I find that very interesting.
I do that with, that is my approach to many things in life too. I have found is that the only way to really do anything in life is to just do it. You
Yeah.
can prepare yourself until you're blue in the face, but you really won't know what anything is like until you're actually doing it. At least for me, that's how I learn best. Um, and the anticipation is something that absolutely kills me. So I am the person who, there's something in front of me. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and get it started, and get to it, because waiting around accomplishes nothing. Um, and I find, if anything, it costs you a lot more. Uh, yeah, my approach is more often than not to just get on with it and do it. And the anxiety and the nervousness, is it there? Absolutely. I still face it every single time there's a blank canvas in front of me. There's that moment of, oh my God, I don't want to mess it up. What am I actually going to do this time? Was that last painting a complete fluke? Um, but then I just have to fight past that moment every time and say, no, this is not about making a beautiful painting that everyone loves. It's about expressing whatever you need to express. So just get it started. And if it's true and if it's honest, then people can tell, and they can connect with it. But if it's artifice and if it's contrived and you're trying to be something, then people can tell that too. I find,
Yeah.
at least.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. I think that's right. And I think that's why there are certain kinds of art, whether it's visual or whether it's musical or whatever, that are quote unquote rough and maybe not fine, but still have such power behind them. And it's because they're imbued with that kind of authenticity, right? They're not, it is a true self-expression. And it's hard to really express or explain in words when and how that comes through, but it is pretty obvious, I think, when it does. You're like, oh yes, I get this.
Hmm.
Yeah. So you just started painting, and were you using acrylics?
No, so sorry. I tried acrylics and watercolors, and I respect watercolor artists so much because that is a tough medium. But it was oils
Mm.
from the beginning. It just felt like I love working with the body and the texture of oil paint in particular. And I find that it's a very patient medium, so it takes a while to dry. What I love doing with it is not painting with fresh oil paint, but I'll usually, this is, a lot of people will mix in different mediums like cold wax or other kinds of buildups, to create texture, but I will typically only and only use oil paint only. And it creates the best texture in my opinion, but you have to let it semi-dry so you can actually cut into it and then start kind of carving and forming it later on. But it's always been oils, and I'm continuing to experiment with them because I find the application can be different in many different ways. And it's a very moldable medium too. I just like experimenting with it, but it's a medium I understand the best. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. When did it switch for you from being just, oh, this is a thing I do by myself as a form of, expression to, I want to share this work with the world?
Um, it took a long time, and I want to say really only recently in the last year.
Oh, wow.
When it comes to my paintings. Before that, it was other forms of art that I was sharing that I felt was important to share. But when it came to my paintings, I really needed to make sure that it was actually something authentic, right? And and that it had relevance and significance in its place. What was I actually giving to the world? Because if it was just another pretty painting, there's a billion of them out there. And technically, there's a billion better painters out there. So, what am I actually trying to take up people's time with? And is it actually worth it? So, for me, it was getting to the point of making sure that, what I am presenting is something that I feel will be worth people's time to look at and that will actually have something to impart. Um, I think that's my responsibility as an artist. And and it took me a long time, I think, to get to the point where I feel like I can actually have that impact on someone. Um, but it takes a long time to get there. And there was a long period of just experimentation, development, constantly painting, painting. I don't even know how many paintings I've made over the last 20 years, but there's been a lot. And not all of them were great. Some of them were really bad. But I think each painting brought me closer to be able to get to a level of communication, or painting, where where I'm able to communicate something that I feel is significant and worth saying, um, in this way at least. So yeah, yeah,
Do,
that's
do you start out with this knowledge? This is what I'm communicating. This is what I'm trying to say, and this is my vision. Or do you allow that to emerge through the process?
that's an interesting question. I allow it to emerge through the process. And I find even if I am starting a painting with one goal or a meaning or something I want to convey, inevitably it will always change. And the painting will take on, its own identity too. And sometimes you have to honor that over what you want it to say, um, depending on what the point of the painting is. But I find the painting usually lets you know halfway through the process or a quarter way through the process what it actually wants to say and how it wants to get there and when it's done too. But over the entire process, my job as the artist or painter is to make sure that the message that I'm wanting to get out there is true and honest and faithful to my subject.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I hear a lot of, I read a lot of things by creative people. And one of the kind of refrains that comes through is this idea of you being there to channel, and that you're not really natural, you're not necessarily in control. You're there to be a lens, you're there to be a channel, you're there to kind of connect with this sort of higher power, for lack of a better word, and let it guide you. And I don't know if that's your experience, but I think that that is, I mean, I've experienced that in my own way as a writer, right? Where I'll sit down and I'll just get into flow. And then when I'm done, I'm like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that I was going to do that.
I love that moment that like,
Yeah.
oh, and yeah, when if you, it's a moment you can't recreate. I found if
Mm.
I try to, even like one time I tried to recreate this flow moment I had where I had like this gorgeous tree that just came out of my palette knife. And I've tried to recreate that moment so many times so I can recreate that exact tree, and it's never happened again. But yeah, flow state, it's something you have very little control over, I find. You can try all you want, but it's something that just happens, and you have to be open to channeling it, as opposed to chasing it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. So you grew up, you got married, had a family, you were working in corporate America for a long time. And
Mhm.
how did that impact your creativity? Were you able to have a creative life and sort of do all those things and be all those things? And I'm asking this specifically as a woman because a lot of my friends who are creative have obligations. We still live in a world where women do a lot of the domestic labor. We do a lot of the um, a lot of everything, right? Communally and in the family,
Yeah.
and even at work, things fall on us that you're exhausted at the end of the day, and it's not always easy to find that, to carve that time out. And a lot of women, I feel that I know, have this sort of resentment about that, where they're like, I have these creative urges, but I just don't have the time and the energy to follow through on them. And what was your experience with sort of balancing your creativity during those years that you were working in corporate America, and when new mom, all of that kind of stuff? And how have you sort of found a way to make changes to accommodate your creativity as you've sort of grown into it?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because there's no one answer. I feel like the answer to that question constantly changed every week, every month. Um, at the beginning, when I first started working like full time in what I would end up doing for the following decade or so in talent acquisition, I kept my creativity up with it almost full time because I didn't have children. So I was working Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 or 6 or 7. And then I was going to a rehearsal, or I was going to a show or a performance or planning for something else that I was going to do on the weekends. That was my life. I did a lot of community organizing too, specifically in the arts in Chicago. So that part of my life just went hand in hand. For a long time, when I had my first daughter, I still remember when I had, I think in my second trimester, I had committed to doing a show that was going to go up 1 week after she was, here. And I don't know why I said yes, but I said yes because I was so committed to just not giving up on my creative projects and my creative life at that time. I was so scared that I was going to have to. Um, and it was one of the most special shows I ever did. Um, I still have the pieces that I worked on for it. And I'm so happy that I made that commitment to myself till this day, because I don't know how easy or how hard it would have been for me to continue honoring that commitment if I didn't work so hard to prioritize it in that moment, even when it felt superfluous and almost frivolous, which is what I was told by many people in that moment, that it was not that important and that it was something that was going to have to let go. Almost like it was a part of being a kid, playtime is over now. And 80% of me was like, no, this isn't my playtime. This is my life. This is the part of me that I live for. And the rest of me is what supports it. My corporate America job is what supports me being able to buy my oil paint and my canvas, because it's not easy being an artist. So after I had my first daughter, I kept my art going with Mozilla, the collective, for about another year or so. After that, it did become truly challenging because I was continuing to work full time, and my daughter was getting older, and that was its own joy and fun too, that I was fully immersed in. So I kept it going through community organizing. And I joined the board of MWC, the Muslim Writers Collective. And even though I wasn't able to perform or do the work and paint and do all those things that I used to do before, in that moment at least, I was still adjacent to it. And I was still able to be inspired by all these artists who were still hitting the stage and singing and doing spoken word. What I loved about MWC was that it was a truly open stage. So there were people from every walk of life. We would have software engineers who would write poetry and perform on the weekends. People who wanted to share significant moments of their life, transitions, comedians. There were some really amazing comedians that hit our stages. So I think being immersed in other people's art, other people's worlds, and also experiencing their passions and drive for years and years, it also in a way educated and fed my own passion to keep going when I could. So when I could, I did. And whenever I found pockets of time throughout the years, whether it would be 6 months there, 3 months here, it was usually always dedicated to, all right, what painting am I going to do now? Because I've got the time to do it. Yeah, I hope that answers your question. It was feeding it in different ways throughout the years, however I could.
Yeah. No, I like that answer very much, because it goes along with another question that I usually ask my guests, which is about the role that creative community plays in helping you stay focused and stay centered on your art. And I'll be the first to say I am an introvert. I do not like socializing in general. It takes so much out of me. I could be very happy as a little monk in a little cell somewhere. But I've only in the last, I would say, couple of years started to recognize how valuable it is to have community around my creativity. And I think because of that, what you're saying, right? The art isn't the point even. It's the conditions in which you view the world and live your life that allow that art to emerge, right? And you can't do that by yourself. You it's very lonely otherwise, right? And it's too easy to let yourself be distracted or waylaid or let other things and other people take control if you don't have that sort of community to bolster your creative identity. And like they say this around faith and religion too, right? Or things like that, where they're like, yeah, it's very hard to do it on your own. You're supposed to do it collectively, right? Because that's what helps you when you feel weak or when you feel, like you can't keep going. The people around you kind of carry you through. And I think that that's true. And that's what I'm hearing from you about this work that you were doing.
Absolutely. It was inspiring, meeting so many incredible artists over the years and community organizers. I think living in their passions and seeing how they did what they did, it absolutely educated me about so many things that I now use to approach my practice with, and not necessarily in the same medium. Um, there were playwrights, that I met from Chicago. Incredible discipline that impressed me because that was something that I struggled with when it came to my artistry was how do I implement discipline without making myself feel forced, right, to do something. Um, so I think just learning from them, being around them, supporting them, and then also being supported by them too when I did perform, um, it was remarkable, and I miss them so much. Uh, I miss being a part of MWC. I was connecting with one of the former board members last week, I think, and Nessa Huaja. She still does MWC in Chicago, and we were just talking about how much the Chicago art scene has changed from when we were doing it. Back then, it was just MWC, and now there's so many different places
Mm.
and stages and collectives and little communities that are popping up, third spaces, which I think is wonderful that there are so many options now for people to go to find community and, possibly a new family or a home.
Yeah. Yeah. What about mentors? And I'm curious to know about people who may have helped you besides your first little man at the art store,
Yeah.
and whether or not you have at any point chosen to mentor someone else.
Hmm. Um, God, there have been, I feel like so many people that I learned an incredible amount from. Um, so Matthew Ozawa, he was the founder of the Ozawa Collective in Chicago. And his vision and the way that he put the shows together, the way that he worked with such a wide variety of skill sets, it was something that I was in awe of truly. And his board too, Caitlin, who I later on approached, and she joined Muslim Writers Collective in Chicago because she did such a great job with Masawa. Um, I learned an incredible amount from them. When it comes to the practice of art, um, there's so much more than just putting the paint to canvas. And I'm learning that my execution right now, the place of my art process that I'm at right now, all of those things that I learned back then are coming into play. I learned a lot how to work with other people in the arts, how to respect other disciplines, um, how to understand that, just because you may think or assume one discipline is one way does not mean that you know anything about it at all. And every discipline and every creative has their own pride, in what they do. Um, and I learned that by working with other creatives from other disciplines, and that was through Mozawa initially. Uh, I learned a lot from working with Nick Jaffe. He was the guitarist for Slowbots, and he had an incredible music career in Chicago. This man could put music and make anything sound good. I would come up with some abstract half, stanza of poetry, and he would turn it into this amazing song. I still, to this day, have no idea how. He was brilliant, still is. He had to move out of Chicago. I believe he lives in St. Paul now. Um, but he was the glue of the band and just the magic, I think, behind every single song that we ever wrote and produced or sang. Um, there are very few people in my life that I've met that truly understood where my song wanted to go, sometimes even before I knew. And he would just know and he would push it there, not just for me, but the entire group together. Creatively speaking, he was incredibly empathetic and patient, and he listened. He didn't impose, he just listened, and then he would softly guide you to where you needed to go. He was very well respected in Chicago in the music scene. And he worked with, I think, artists and musicians from any and every genre you can point to across the city. I think till this day, there's people, from like the music scene from 10, 15 years ago in Chicago who would still remember Nick with nothing but respect. He was probably one of my greatest mentors, creatively speaking. I think I still remember and learn a lot from just our time working together.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's great. And I think I love your perspective about just, you know, I guess it's not that you're trying to just become a painter and be a good painter. You are trying to, or you are living into being an artist. And that is such a much larger idea, right? It's not just about a specific competency or a skill. It's about a way of being in the world and a way of interacting with the world and communicating and all of these things. And, it's one of the reasons why I have this podcast is I love hearing different creative people from different disciplines and one, seeing what the common threads might be, but also then seeing what unique things they have to offer and what insights they have just from their own practice. So I think that that's really cool. And again, I'm very, I'm not going to say envious. Maybe there's a holy envy there. I call it holy envy in that I'm not, there's no jealousy. I can only imagine how wonderful having that environment and that kind of guidance from friends like that might be.
The Slowbots, that was our name. He came up with the name for the band, like Slow Robots. It was one of the most special experiences, and all of our, just us the band members. I think we all agree we reconnect, every couple of years still, and we all remember that time with just so much love and fondness because creatively we pushed ourselves. All of us did. And we had so much fun. It was just a ton of fun performing with them. They were good people. Creatively, when you find that group that you can just work well with and your creativity is understood, it's all gold, whatever comes out. Because even if it's bad, the people around you will make it good because they understand you. But I think that's the power of having community in art, right? And people who understand you. And can support you as well. Like one time I went on stage and I completely blanked on the lyrics to the song that I was singing. It happens to everyone, at least once in their singing career. It happened to me and it was terrifying. Once that happened on stage, I never went on stage without like my starter lyrics written down on anywhere basically I could look at. But yeah, it happened, and I was terrified, totally froze. Nick picked up on it. He was the only one that did. And I still don't know how. He started tapping his foot and mouthing, and I was like, oh my God, okay. And then I turned around and I had the lyrics in my head.
Wow.
But he knew what to do to like connect with me and communicate and get the words in my head in that moment. And it was beautiful. It worked. But yeah, it having those people, they really are once in a lifetime, people, and they're rare. So if you find them, just be grateful for them when you have them.
Yeah. I have to say, I've said this many times. I'm not a musician. I was a vocalist when I was younger, but I have such appreciation for musicians and for live music. And it's seeing a band that's locked in like that understands one another on this subatomic level is literal magic. Like it is the closest thing to magic I have ever seen. And it is just such a beautiful thing to witness and to be part of. And I'm very lucky. I live in Austin. We get lots of great live music here, but I just can't imagine life without it. It's glorious.
I agree. I miss singing so much. I haven't been doing much of it the last few years, but it's something my goal is to get back to it. Hopefully, in the next year, is find some new collaborators and actually get back to singing again because it is an experience for me too. It is an absolute release and catharsis, and it communicates, I think, a totally different side of me too.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I want to ask you, we're coming toward the end here, but I have a slightly controversial subject to bring up.
Mhm.
Now, I saw the other day that you had posted something online on one of your accounts where you had shown your art and then you had run it through AI and you showed
Mhm.
what AI's interpretation was. And I found that absolutely shocking because so many creative people that I know, so many artists are just, they refuse to even touch it. They don't even want to look at it,
Mhm.
right? They're so, and part of that I think comes from the fear. It is very much a fear-based thing, because frankly, the people that have created AI have flat out said that they're trying to usurp humanity. So I get that,
Yeah.
but also there are other people that who are bona fide artists, right? I'm not talking about the guy who can't do anything and is just trying to, you know, make crappy art so that he can sell it on Etsy on dish towels, right? I'm talking about people who are actually trying to engage with this tool and use it in a way that benefits them as an artist. And I don't hear enough of those voices. And I'm curious. I mean, for me,
Mm.
it's kind of poison. Like I don't ever want any of my writing to come through AI. But I
Mhm.
also don't think that AI is inherently evil. And so I'm curious to know what you see as the future of these platforms, these programs, and how they can impact art and the art world in a positive way, and or whether or not you think that's even possible. Like, are we are we being optimistic there? Is that foolish optimism?
So me personally, I think AI is here. It's here. It's not going to go anywhere. It's the worms have been let out of the can. Pandora's box has been opened, and it's impossible to unring the bell at this point. Um, do I agree with any way that it's being used in its current form to basically control humanity and society? No, I think it's evil. Um, but I don't think AI is inherently evil. I think people using it are using it for really bad things, terrible, evil things. I think the way or the reason why I was interested in it was just simple open curiosity because I have a very a side to me that's just always trying to experiment with everything around me. And that is what drove that experiment was just pure curiosity to see what would happen. And in exchanging, that having that exchange with the platform and learning more about it, using it more because I fed a couple more of my paintings into it to understand its limitations and its benefits too. It has serious limitations. I don't think artistry, when it comes to people producing artistry, no, that's not going anywhere. There is nothing like the genuine creativity, the touch, that humanity that we have naturally. AI will never be able to replace that. What it spits out is still very contrived. Can it be beautiful, controlled, curated, used as a tool essentially to create what you want? That I do think is possible, and that can be done faithfully under very controlled ways or in controlled ways. But I do think that the way AI was introduced into the world and what it's being used for, no, I would absolutely never engage with it in that form whatsoever. I do think AI can have a place in the art world. Um, and I wish it had been introduced in a way where artists had more control over it and it was approached from the angle of possibility and creativity, how it can be used to help people, right? And enhance what we can do and what we want to do as opposed to control it. Um, but I think it's still possible for artistry to engage with it in ethical ways, uh, but in very controlled ways. And it's so impossible to do that with the way these platforms are being run right now. So I completely respect anyone's decision to not engage in it at all and just say no, because ultimately where the information is going to end up is not something anyone has control over right now. Um, but at the same time, I have just this experimental side to me, and that drove the experiment. I am continuing to learn more about it and to see if there is some way that it can be used interestingly within the art spaces. And I do think that there is. And I'm continuing to use it in my art spaces to some degree, but in an acknowledged way that this is not my artistry exactly. It's an AI interpretation of it, which I think in some ways can be interesting. The big drawback to AI is that it is incredibly uncomfortable with gray space. It needs to come to a conclusion. All of my abstract work, it's incredibly interesting. It actually will take like a totally abstract picture of a lake and give me a bear in the middle of it. Because it needs to drive to a conclusion, you know, like what is it? It's a bear. Uh, so no, I don't think it can ever replace humanity. I think we will always have the upper hand when it comes to that creative spark and genius. But at the end of the day, it's a tool, and that's how I'm viewing it currently in my practice in a very limited way. And I totally understand that, you know, people may not really view that as ethical too, even, which I can respect. Um, but what drives me is just that experimentation and just pure curiosity.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw a TikTok or a reel or something from an artist, and his commentary was that there's no way that AI can replace art because art is by definition a human endeavor, right? Now, if you're talking about recreating, you know, the art that you hang on the Holiday Inn bedroom wall, that's not art. That's product, right? That is
Yes.
that is a product. But art in and of itself is a human endeavor. And for the most part, you know, he made the point of like, it used to be that humans used to play chess against computers and people would watch it and get very excited about it. But once the computers got better than humans, we stopped watching that and we went back to just watching humans play, because what's interesting is the human drama part of it, right? It's not necessarily like machines are not that interesting to us. We are interested in seeing the reflection of someone else's humanity and their experience with ours. And that just doesn't exist with machine. It just doesn't.
Yeah, I don't think machines can innovate,
Right.
truly innovate. They can
Right.
extrapolate from what they've been given, but true innovation, I think, can only come from people.
Yes, agreed. So I don't actually think that I think, and what he said too, I agree. He said it can obviously, it can destroy the bad art. Like if you're a person who just makes bad art or does, you know, whatever crappy designs that you put on stuff and sell, whatever, at craft shows, whatever, then yes, it probably will have an impact. But if you're a person who's doing art for the sake of doing art, and this is part of like, you know, we have weird ideas in our society about what is worth doing, what the real value of art is. I don't, you know, we're consumerist culture. We are way more interested in the product than the process. That's you know, that's our fault. Like our priorities are messed up. But when it comes down to it, and we're talking about pure art for the sake of art and sake of human expression, I have no fear whatsoever there.
I don't either. And even just speaking up for the trade show person, right, with AI inspired notebooks and journals that they're selling.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been to a lot of these craft shows. I've done one or two of them. I kind of want to get into it maybe in the next year or so a little bit more. Um, but I have met, people with so much pride, right, in what they've created using AI sometimes. And I don't feel right taking that pride away from them, right,
Mhm.
by saying, like, oh, but it's AI, so you didn't really do it. Even though it's their idea, it was their idea to put it on that journal, right? To say this is something that is pretty, I like, and I'm going to put it out there to see if someone else likes it. That is an entirely human endeavor. And that's something that I can allow anyone to be proud of, right? It doesn't have to be the endeavor of 20 years of arduous, painting. It can be the result of an afternoon of putting something together on whatever platform on your computer. But as long as you have that human pride, right? This is something that I actually made and I'm proud of it. And this is why I made it with a clear purpose. I can find that to be art too. I can. Um, I think the intention makes a difference in art. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. I'm not,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm still working through this. I have a lot of
Me
feelings,
too.
and I don't think that it's, yeah, like it's not. I mean, on one hand, like I'm Gen X. I have seen this drastic evolution, along technology in my lifetime, where now what a fine art photographer was doing in the 70s and 80s, you can go out with this phone and
Mm,
I am not a good photographer, but I've taken some damn good pictures with my phone, right? And it's not me,
right. Yeah.
it's the phone, right?
Yeah.
It's doing all that work for, it's doing all the calibration and all of that kind of stuff. So it's really hard to know where that line is, and we have
That's
to
so true.
but we do have to wrestle with it, because I think that you are correct in saying that it's not going anywhere. There needs to be, at this point, we can't just cede that ground. I think we need to find ways to verify work and say this has been done through with AI, or this has not been. Like, there has to be certification. There has to be a way for us to make those educated choices as consumers.
Hmm.
I don't want to read a book that's generated from AI. Somebody else might.
No, I don't.
More power to them.
Yeah.
But how do I support artists that are doing things in a way that I think they should be doing them? And then there's the whole ethical piece around the tools and how they're being run and financed and all of that. So there's a lot
Mhm.
there, but the point that
There
I'm
is.
making is we can't just throw up our hands and say, well, fuck it. Like, there has to be some kind of dialogue around this right now.
There does. I agree with that because there is so much gray space. And do I agree with there was, oh God, who was it? Some official recently. The line stuck in my head, but the name is escaping me. It happens in my brain. The line though specifically is intelligence is going to be something that is sold unit by unit. Like it's almost
Yes.
like it's going to be commodified intelligence.
Yes.
And I'm beginning to see that, right? On Instagram, I was scrolling the other day and there's ads now for people who are coming up with entire companies on AI that are profitable without learning or knowing how to do any of it. And
Yep.
that to me is, well, what happened to all of those people who were doing those jobs,
Right.
right? All of those people that were doing those jobs now are not getting compensated. And the only way that they can actually engage in this kind of new marketplace is by getting compensated, but they can't because their job was taken by AI. So, how do they, at this point, make a living doing something that is becoming obsolete? It's
Yes.
like this big monster that just keeps getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
intelligence, in a way, I think is already commodified through AI, and it's terrifying. It is scary, but I think it's impossible to ignore. And and not understanding it, I think is going to be more costly than otherwise.
Yeah. No, I agree. And it's out there. Like, it is out there. That's the problem. It's open source. It exists on millions and millions of computers all over the world. And it has been released into the wild, so people can do whatever the hell they want with it. There is no putting that back. The box is open. And I'm so sorry to have to deliver that news, but that is the reality. And as somebody who also saw the rise of the internet and social media, and I was out there, with my Cassandra hat on, screaming and yelling to people that maybe we should find regulation for that. Maybe we need to, and being summarily ignored, because there was a gold rush, obviously, back in the late 90s and early 2000s. I don't, we're just a heedless species. And I don't know if that will happen. Yeah.
Unfortunately. I think there was a strong push to make AI ethical and to keep it ethical. But I think those people, from what I've been reading and researching on at least, were pushed out at the very early onset. So I don't know what ethical frameworks exist anymore, within any open source AI platform that's being used currently,
Right.
Which is really terrifying. It is terrifying.
It is terrifying. Yeah. 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 Especially when it's being funded by, the military.
Yes.
Like, that's not fun. Well, this has been a great conversation, despite our little doom and gloom there. But I also think it's important for us to have that conversation. And I was actually really happy to see you post about it, because I don't think enough of us are having this conversation. I'm only seeing people go one extreme or the other. Just ignore it, pretend it doesn't exist and it will go away. Or, I'm going to write 10 novels a year using it and become a millionaire. And both of those to me are horrible options. So, right. I'm grateful that you were willing to have this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to talk more about it, but I'll be exploring more about it too. So yeah, if you want, just keep checking my feed. But AI is something I'm experimenting with a lot more, just to try to understand it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, how can people find your work if they are listening to this podcast and have become charmed by your brilliance?
Well, you can go to my website, yasminaliart.com. I also have a Saatchi profile, as well as an Etsy site where I sell some crappy AI designs. Inspired by my paintings, and the whole description is up on there too.
But can I get it on a Yeti tumbler? That's the important thing.
Oh gosh, no, I'm not there yet. Okay. I'm not there yet. Working my way there. Ooh, no, but primarily you can reach me through yasminaliart.com.
Okay, excellent. Well, I'm going to link to all your stuff in my notes, and I think that you're really cool. I consider you a true artist, and I'm really excited that you had the opportunity to come and talk. And I wish you all the best. I think people like you who are just, it's like you just have creativity oozing out of every pore. Like, everything you do is art, and that's rad.
Thank you. That's a huge compliment. I really appreciate that. And I appreciate you reaching out, honestly. I've been reading and following your journey too for the last few years, and I am inspired, honestly, by just so many things that you've done, and by your approach too, of just, at least from my perspective, what it looks like is just doing it as well. Mm-hmm. So, but yes, I look forward to seeing how your career and your artistic journey develops too. And Excellent. Continues to grow. Yes. But Excellent. Thank you for reaching out.
All right. Well, we'll have this up shortly and share it out to the world. And I hope you'll come back again in the future and have another conversation.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. And I'll talk to you soon.